back. Bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I'll wait for my assistant to let me know, am I live? So I can start, inshallah. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay, very good. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم وإنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم. I often used to wonder why Allah said that it's a great oath. I just watched your lecture on it too. This is the oath for the rest of you at the end of Surah Al-Waqi'ah. And I did give a pretty detailed lecture on it. And I saw this comment before and I thought it was a really nice comment, so it's good that we included it here in the discussion. I often used to wonder why Allah said that it's a great oath, meaning the oath of the placement of the stars being compared to the ayat of the Quran, right? But I still, and I also talked about, I watched your lecture on it too, in which you told that just as the night star guides the people in the desert at night, similarly the Quran guides the people in darkness. But I still thought there must be more reasons behind it. In your last Q&A, you said that you are still not able to cage the sequence of ayat in a particular pattern and at the very instant these ayat clicked in my mind, and I thought, just as we can't identify the patterns of all the stars because there are numerous stars in a galaxy, although we have identified certain patterns such as Usra Major, the Great Bear, we can't identify all of them as it is beyond human capacity. Isn't it amazing how huge and magnificent the Quran is? It is pretty incredible. And that's a very good observation about those ayat. Do you think the ayat of Surah Al-Qiyamah, 16 to 19, are regarding qira'at? Because some scholars say that it indicates that there's only one qira'at of the Quran, and concluded from these ayat, لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه. I think that it's kind of a jump to assume that there's only one qira'ah of the Quran because of this ayah, because the ayah isn't actually talking about the various ways in which that same qira'ah can be read. So I wouldn't use that ayah as an evidence to deny the existence of... Okay, I'm back. So inshallah, I will be doing another course on Quran seminars, probably with the help of Sheikh Suhaib Saeed, on the compilation of the Quran and the qira'at in particular, and some of the main questions regarding the qira'at, because I think it's an interesting subject and people should have a resource to learn about it in depth. And I don't think it's been covered in a way that people can consume. But it's important to know that qira'at are very much a part of our tradition. It's a very core component of the study of the Quran. And actually, I was learning from Dr. Akram Nadwi that the hafs qira'ah, meaning the average mushaf that you pick up and you recite Quran from, that wasn't even the most popular of the qira'at. So, I mean, just because you have it's popularized over time doesn't mean that's the only qira'ah of the Quran. So that is a complex subject, but nonetheless an interesting and important one. So hopefully in the future of Quran seminars, this venture, there will be more courses that highlight some of these things that are not as clear for the larger public. And that's kind of the intention behind this venture, Quran seminars. I thought coherence is something not much discussed or really not explored as much as I'm hoping to in this course, and I hope you appreciate that in this course too. And the same way, there are other areas of Quran studies. I think the relationship between the Quran and the Bible, there's a lot to be talked about there. Or, the parable, قِيَامَتِي ثُمَّ إِلَيَّ مَرْجِعُكُمْ I don't know why the connection's going in and out. Okay, we're back. Sorry. Then Hazrat Isa was to come back, he broke the cross, finished the tax, etc. If we review all the ayahs regarding the second coming of Isa, it is not fitting in the Quran context. There are hadith which say about second coming, confused about what's right. So there's a confusion about whether or not the second coming of Isa alayhi salam is mentioned in the Quran or not. I think that's the gist of the question. Of course, the explicit mention of the return of Isa is in several ahadith, but it's not found in the Quran. As a result, some have extrapolated that those ahadith can be dismissed, and because the Quran is not explicitly saying Isa alayhi salam is coming back, therefore There's no reason to think that he is coming back. It's not a fundamental component of Islam. Um, I wouldn't be one to argue whether it's a fundamental component of Islam or not. I can tell you that from my reading of the Quran, I find myself very convinced that the Quran is not making explicit, but certainly indicating his return. That's my study of the Quran and what it's led me to. I can share some of those insights with you. Whether you find yourself in agreement with them or not is a separate issue, but I can certainly share with you what I do know about the subject. So, one of the things is actually the way Allah spoke about Isa alayhi salam in Surah Al Imran. So let me pull that up and I'll read some of that off to you, and then I'll explain to you why I think that's important. Let me open it up. Bismillah. Okay. So Allah gives Maryam salamun alayha the news of a child that she's going to have, and then Allah describes that child and the miracles that this child will be given. So here's the list of those miracles. This starts from ayah number 46 of, actually no, you could say it starts from 45 of Surah Al Imran. إذ قالت الملائكة يا مريم إن الله يبشرك بكلمة منه اسمه المسيح عيسى بن مريم وجيها في الدنيا والآخرة ومن المقربين. When the angel said to Maryam, certainly Allah is giving you good news of a word that comes from him, the word being Isa, the son of Maryam, the Al-Masih, the Messiah, Jesus, the son of Mary. وَجِيهًا فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, noble in this life and in the next. وَمِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ, and from those that have been brought very close. Now, that's interesting, مِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ, it's physically brought close to. So there's already kind of a hint. He's of those that have been brought very close to Allah. Allah has mentioned so many of his prophets, but muqarrab is an interesting term used for Isa alayhi salam. Anyway, we keep going further. وَيُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ فِي الْمَهْدِ وَكَهْلًا وَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ, and he'll speak to people in the cradle, mahd, as the mother's holding him, وَكَهْلًا, and in middle age. Okay, so this is significant. Allah says that Isa alayhi salam will speak to people in the cradle and in his middle age, and he's among the righteous, وَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. So the first description of him was he's from those that have been brought very close, and the second one is that he's from among the righteous. These are all hints right now, I'm not explaining them. قالت ربي أن يكون لي ولد, how could I have a child? No man has ever touched me. I won't go to the Arabic, I'll just read the English off to you as it comes to me. The angel said that is how Allah creates whatever he wants. Whenever he decides an issue, all he has to do is say to it be, and it becomes. And he'll also teach him the book and the wisdom and the Torah and the Injil, and he'll send him as a messenger, make him a messenger to the Israelites, that I am going to قَدْ جِئْتُكُمْ بِآيَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ, I've come to you with a miracle from your master. I create for you, for your observation, from clay, كَهَيْئَةِ الطَّيْرِ, the shape of a bird. Then I blow into it and it turns into a living bird. وَأُبْرِئُ الْأَكْمَهَ وَالْأَبْرَصَ, and I'm going to heal and free the leper and the blind from their from their disease. وَأُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, and I'm going to give life to the dead by Allah's permission, and I'm going to tell you what you eat and what you're storing in your homes. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ, and I'm going to confirm everything that's in the Torah, and I'm going to make halal some things that were made haram to you, and I come to you with this miracle from your master, so be cautious of Allah and obey me. So if you look at this ayah, there's a lot of miracles given to Isa. He's speaking as a baby. Then on top of that, Allah says He will have taught him the book and the wisdom and Torah and Injil, meaning Allah Himself will teach him Torah and Injil, not just Injil. So Allah has given him knowledge of Torah, just like He gave it to Musa alayhi salam, again, over again. And so he can reconfirm what is actually original Torah and what changes they made, what modifications they made. Then the clay bird that he blows into, it turns into a living bird. Then the healing, then the bringing of the dead to life by Allah's permission, and then telling people what they ate the day before, or what they're going to eat when they go home, or what they've been storing and hiding and burying inside of their homes. He can tell them what they have inside their homes. All of this is a sign that Allah informs him, right? So these are miracles, 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 a long list of miracles. The only thing that's not a miracle here is the fact that he'll speak to people in his middle age. Like, why is that amazing? Everything else is, whoa, that's incredible, that's incredible, that's incredible. And he'll speak to people when he's, let's just say, 40 years old or 33 years old or whatever. How is that amazing? That's a very normal thing to do. Like if you were to only make a list of miracles, you didn't even have to mention, oh, by the way, when he's an adult, he'll speak to people too. No, you just say that he's just going to talk as a baby. That's the amazing part. Unless there's a way that he will be speaking to adults, and that's also amazing. And if you were taken away before he hit that age, or in that age, he was preserved, and then thousands of years later or centuries later, he's brought back, and he's still that age and he speaks to people, that becomes miraculous too. Interestingly enough, Muqarrabin, he's been brought close to Allah. And the next description of it is min as-salihin, he's among the righteous. Prophets are min al-anbiya, they're from among the prophets. Or later on, he says he was a messenger to Bani Israel. But when Allah says he will speak to people in middle age, he doesn't say he'll be among prophets. He says, يُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ بِالْمَهْدِ وَكَهْلًا وَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. And he's among the good people, righteous people. In other words, when he comes back, he's not coming back as a messenger. He's coming back as a member of the righteous Muslim community. He's a member of the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. That's as-salihin. You know, there's 4 categories of good people. An-nabiyyin, as-siddiqeen, as-shuhada, as-salihin. Nabiyyin are done. Siddiqeen are the ones who will live in the time of a prophet. They're siddiqeen. And they confirm the truth in them. Shuhada are people who died for the cause of Islam. And the rest of us are supposed to work towards being salihin. Right? That's the rest of us. He comes back, he's not a nabi, because the final nabi is already the Prophet ﷺ. He's not a siddiq, because he doesn't have a prophet to confirm that's in front of him. He's not from the shuhada, and then so what's left for him is a salihin. So that the language of the ayat seems to be in line with the view of the coming back of Isa alayhi salam. Additionally, there's another place that I find convincing about the return of Isa alayhi salam, and that's the way he's talked about in Surah Maryam. And what Allah says about him in Surah Maryam, I'll erase this and I'll put that out so I can read it off to you. I'll open it up. Okay. So he says, قال إني عبد. This is him speaking as a baby. He says, قال إني عبد الله أتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. I am the servant of Allah. Allah has already given me the book and made me a prophet. That's what he says as a baby. وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت. And he has made me blessed wherever I may be. That's an interesting piece of language. Wherever I may be. I mean, he's going to be in Nazareth, in Nasiriyah, and he's going to be preaching to them. Why would he say that Allah has made him blessed wherever he may be? It must be there. He's going to be in some special place that's not normal for other places to be, for other people to be. The other interesting thing about the word barakah is that it actually means to maintain something and to keep increasing it and increasing it and increasing it. Right? So Allah keeps increasing the years of his life and preserves him. That's kind of barakah also. Like when somebody has barakah in age, actually means they have a long age. وَجَعَلَنِي مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ. Okay. وَأَوْصَانِي. This is really interesting. وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا. And he inspired me, God counseled me to pray and to give zakat, to give charity, so long as I'm alive. The phrase that's really important here is, so long as I'm alive. Okay? So Isa alayhi salam is saying, Allah counseled me to pray and to give zakat so long as I'm alive. Okay. Then he says, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي. And to be good to my mother. Wait a second. Why not just say, Allah counseled me to prayer and to zakat and to be good to my mother so long as I'm alive? You would imagine the baby, if he's that young, should say, I'm going to be good to my mom so long as I live. But clearly Allah has revealed to him, prayer and zakat are going to go on as long as you live. But you are going to be outliving your mother. So you cannot be good to your mother as long as you live. It's already been inspired to him that he will outlive his mother. When he comes back, he's going to still counsel, Allah has still counseled him to pray and zakat, but he can no longer be counseled to be good to his mom. His mom's gone for several centuries by then. So ما دمت حيا وبرا بوالدتي وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. That's actually a response to the Christian narrative about Isa alayhi salam. And finally, وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيَّ يَوْمَ وُلِدْتُ وَيَوْمَ أَمُوتُ. Now this is important. Salam upon me the day on which I was born, the day on which I die. The day on which I die. Now, Quran makes a distinction between dying and being killed. Like, first of all, those who die in the path of Allah don't say they're amwat. Don't say that they're dead. Allah Azza wa Jalla has already said, "Bal ahya," they're alive. If you accept the narrative of Jesus being crucified, then he's actually the day I'll be martyred, the day I'll be sacrificed, not the day I die. Salam on me the day I die. It's actually referring to a regular death. So many places in Quran, when death is contrasted with being killed, وَلَئِن مُتُّمْ أَوْ قُتِلْتُمْ, like in this surah, وَلَئِن مُتُّمْ أَوْ قُتِلْتُمْ لَإِلَى اللَّهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. If you were to be killed or you died. If you died or you were killed, you'd be returned to Allah. And so that distinction also seems to be indication. So what I'm getting at is there are multiple indications in the Quran about the return of Isa alayhi salam. It's not explicitly clear, but I'm not so sold when people have a surface reading of the Quran and then they make drastic conclusions and are ready to dismiss the body of prophetic tradition in order to justify their surface reading of the Quran. I personally find a problem with that. I don't find it convincing. I don't declare them disbelievers or fasiq or wrong or whatever else. I'm just saying I'm not convinced. I'm sorry. I see too much weight in the argument of the Quran, and especially when Allah says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Don't they look deeply into the Quran? A shallow reading of the Quran and then you act like you already know everything the Quran has to say, or the Quran never mentioned anything about the return of Jesus. Well, let's not do that. Let's not do that with the Book of Allah. Let's take a deeper look before we say, okay, it has nothing to say on the subject. All right, so I'll keep moving along. Uh, Here's a question: how to do tadabbur? I'm working on it. That's a tough one. Um, Tadabbur is two things. It's a spiritual exercise and it's a mental exercise, right? So there are indications in the Quran on how to do tadabbur, what approach you should take to the Quran, like أحكمت آياته ثم فصلت ayat, Quran, a book whose ayat were stitched together, bound together, and then they were separated. What that means then is you should probably look at the ayat in flow, how they are connected to one another. What is going on in these ayat? What questions arise in your mind? There are some places in the Quran that seem to indicate even a methodology for our study or our engagement with the Quran. For example, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي يُوسُفَ وَإِخْوَتِهِ آيَاتٌ لِلسَّائِلِينَ. In Yusuf and his brothers, there are many miracles, many signs, many lessons for those who ask questions, also those who have needs. So we should come to the Quran with the attitude of needing guidance and seeking Allah's answer. It's not just a book that fulfills our curiosity. It's a book that we need guidance from. That attitude changes our ability to, and our not just our ability, our drive to extract from it what we need from it, the guidance that we need from it. And these are, to me, honestly, if you internalize the greatness of the Quran before you approach it, and you refresh that in you, and you approach it, tadabbur will become easy. Really, it's a mindset thing. When often even seasoned, like well experienced students of Quranic studies, they approach the Quran as though their interpretation of it or the tafsir or their knowledge of Arabic and all of that stuff is kind of imposing itself onto the word of Allah. Like the word of Allah is supreme, and we're supposed to put ourselves in a position of humility. That's one of the things I'm grateful in our study of Surah Al Imran that's coming up in Ramadan, inshallah, is going to be reinforced in the very beginning. The grandiose, power of the Quran and how humble we're supposed to be in its awe. Could you please share with us which verses belong to which section of Surah An-Nur, and what linguistic markers did you use for determining which ayat belong to which section? By linguistic markers, I mean something like what Neil Robinson mentioned in his paper on the structure of Surah Al-Ma'idah. For example, one of the markers he used is that the beginning and the end of a section have similar wording or phrases, like Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu wa laqad, which also determine a new subject or beginning of a new section. So you want that for Surah An-Nur. I didn't exactly use language markers, and this was a pretty elaborate process coming up with the coherence of Surah An-Nur. Let me see if I have that on this laptop. So you're looking for which ayah to which ayah? Let me see if I can pull that up. Let me see if I can dig it up in my email, maybe. No, it's not there. Give me a second more. If I can't find it, I'll have to postpone it to another session. I did this in 2015, so I'm gonna have to dig up my notes on it. I can't seem to find it right now. But there were some pretty. I mean, I didn't look for, like, you know how Neil Robinson looks for like language markers like laqad, and the other one you mentioned was ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. That may be the case in some surahs. I haven't done my own structural analysis of Ma'idah yet, but I do remember, at least from Nur, a lot of the passages are very distinctly separated from each other by subject matter. I mean, you go from discussion on law to Allah's commentary on a story that occurred, or an incident that occurred, and it's succinct. It's like tightly woven together, to then admonition about that, post commentary. So I mean, each of them, it seems to be, from a subject thematic point of view, are very distinct from one another. When I decide to explore the structure of a surah, it's a long process. I mean, I most recently worked on Ali Imran, which was quite a bit of work, and it's still a work in progress, but at least an overall framework I understand of it. But you can't, obviously you can't look at 200 ayat at once, so you have to look at, a certain grouping of ayat and say, okay, does this seem to be coming together before something else, another subject begins, and then you try to kind of stay within that passage and see if that comes together succinctly before you move on to the next passage. And sometimes those next passages, like you might be thinking maybe it's symmetrical or something, so you're going to see A, B, C, and then C, B, A. But what if you find A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and you're like, well, none of this is connected in a symmetrical kind of way. Maybe there isn't a pattern here. And then you later realize it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and then all of that in reverse. Like, sometimes it's really elaborate, like the Israelite passage, right? So it's sometimes it's easy to spot, and sometimes it just takes a lot of note taking and annotations per few ayat to be able to see, wait, where did I see this again? Where else was this? Where else was this? And then to draw connections, or to make links that otherwise aren't very obvious. And the language markers may be one way of doing it, but I think things like walaqad are more like anchors than they are necessarily ways to tell whether a passage has begun or ended, even though in some cases that does seem to be the case. Like in Baqarah, right? So the phrasing at the beginning of a passage and ending of a passage are very, very similar. Please excuse my poor English. Sure. I have a question, and more precisely, I need your light. I think you mean insight, but that's okay. An idea that I meditate. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا, I think, is a way to read the Quran. This pair is amazing because, like a salihat, everything Allah created in pairs. It contains a beautiful contrast. One is internally hidden, the other is external and visible. One is inactive and theoretical, and the other is active and practical. One is reflecting the creation with Allah, and the other is with His creation. One is connected to the akhirah, while the other is what we're supposed to do in this dunya. I can't read these pairs without thinking about them. That's really beautiful. That is really beautiful. Never heard this before, and it's remarkable. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. Um, الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر, that I consider just the plural form of the same notion. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. Allah and His Messenger, dunya and akhirah, salah and zakah, samawat and ard, ilm and hikmah, al-akharin wa salihin. I don't know about that one. Al-amin wal-qawi, okay. Um, لا تنيا في ذكري واذهبا إلى فرعون, okay. آمنا به وعليه توكلنا قالوا ربنا. So there's lots of pairs you're saying. Is the psychological آمنوا وعملوا صالحات a remedy for fear and sadness? There's another example I found in the obvious وإذا قيل Surah Al-Baqarah in the beginning. I'm having a hard time processing this. إذا قيل لهم آمنوا ولا تفسدوا. Or perhaps I don't see things like I should see. Many years ago, I got really curious about pairs of things in the Quran and then threes of things, and الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر, and then يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. There's four things and four things and four things. How many kinds of fours are in the Quran? How many kinds of twos are in the Quran? How many kinds of threes are in the Quran? I did that many years ago, and then I thought maybe I'm just crazy, so I stopped doing it. But in my early days of studying coherence, this is the kind of thing that I used to do a lot more of. But your observations about Iman and Amal Salih, Amal Salih is a very beautiful one. And I tend to agree with almost all of your observations on it. Um, could you please shed light on the word ayah? I don't know if that's coming up in the series or how far along we are, but the word ayah occurs in Arabic in the meaning of valuable goods. خَرَجَ الْقَوْمُ بِآيَاتِهِمْ. The question is, can you tell us the meanings of the word ayah, just like you described surah? I believe ayah, the way it's used for the ayat of the Quran, is unique to the Quran. And I'm also convinced that the way Allah revealed the Quran is different from the way He revealed Torah and Injil. Like, it's fundamentally different. It's Al-Furqan. It's actually separate from the other revelations, and even the manner in which they were revealed. Like Musa alayhi salam received alwah, right? He received tablets, and Isa alayhi salam was inspired with the teachings of Allah, but he even said that the premonition he gave, that's still recorded in the Bible, is that the final prophet that will come will speak my words. Like, the words won't even be his. So it indicates that there's actually some degree of paraphrasing in the previous words of Allah, but there's direct quotation in the Quran itself. So the ayat are certainly unique, and the term is unique. So the word ayah means several things. The verb that comes from it is ta'ayya yata'ayya, which means to head in a particular direction. So an ayah is a means by which one finds direction. The word ayah also means valuable goods. So they say when the Arabs were traveling and they camped out and then they packed up and left, and all you have left is ash from a fire they made, or bones from food they already ate, or things like that. Like, just valuable things aren't there anymore. And so you come by these remains and you say, خَرَجَ الْقَوْمُ بِآيَاتِهِمْ. The group of people left and they took all their valuables with them. In other words, an ayah is something valuable. So far, an ayah gives you direction, an ayah is something valuable. Ayah also gives you the word ay. Ay actually means literally meaning in the Arabic language. And so the ayah is something that every ayah has some meaning. It has some purpose. Direction, value, purpose, so far. Then you've got the word that comes from the same origin as ayah. Means absolutely yes, like a convincing yes. Conviction comes from the word ayah. Like, it's in its origin is the meaning of conviction. Ayah also means a sign that points to something. Like, it's kind of tied to the first one where I said its direction. That's why ayah, they call it signs. An ayah reminds you of something else, or it indicates or points its way to something else. So there are ayat along the way that help you, symbols or markers that let you know, okay, this exit is this many miles away or this many miles away. That's actually the other meaning of the word ayah. So the word ayah, and ay, by the way, ay comes from it, which is to distinguish something, meaning every ayah is distinctly the feature of its maker. And it could also mean every ayah is distinct from every other ayah. So that's the other meaning of ayah. And ay also means ta'ajjub, like ayyu rajul hada, like what an amazing guy. So The word ayah in its origin also includes something that you should be in wonder about, in awe of. And these are all the implications hiding inside the word ayah. And Allah chose such a beautiful word to describe the smallest unit of His revelation, something that should give us direction, something that is valuable, something that has meaning, something that is a sign leading back to Him, an indication leading back to Him, something that is miraculous and thus should make us in awe of Him, something that gives us conviction. It's like 6 things that are just embedded inside the word ayah. And that's the word that He chose to describe the essential relationship of us with His revelation. But interestingly, the word ayah is used in the Quran for all reality. History is ayat. But they're not ayat, they're ayat in them. There are ayat, so you'll see fi most of the time, with one exception, I think. There's a fi there. So, inna fi dhalika la ayah. Inna fi khalqi samawati wal ard la ayatin. So you have in the mountain, in the tree, in the bird, in history, inside of human beings. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. Right? We'll show them our ayat in the skies and in themselves until it becomes clear to them that it's purpose, that it's in fact the truth. In other words, the ayat of the Quran are ayat in and of themselves. But the reality, the sky, the earth, the tree, history, our human experience, all of them, you have to go inside of them to find the ayat. They're not obvious. You have to look for them and then you'll find the ayat. They don't make themselves manifest until you لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, for people who want to think. These are ayat bayyinat. These are ayat obviously wadih, muttadihat in and of themselves. They're clear in and of themselves. But how is the mountain an ayah? Unless you ponder and reflect, you're not going to see the ayah in it. There's an ayah in it. It isn't the ayah itself, there's an ayah in it. But in that sense, the word ayah is the translate urwa as anchor, 256. The translation I found in the English tafsir is a firm handle, a tight knot. Those are also implications, yes. Other translation mentioned handhold. Okay. In the dictionary, sounds weird and lays, there are several metaphorical meanings such as bottom loop, mug handle, bucket handle. Other scholars used to understand the imagery of a ship anchor and refer to darkness as the layers of deep water. Is this your interpretation? Yeah, I'm looking at ship anchor, really. That's what I succinctly used it for. I do appreciate the style of effort of translation. Thank you. Really good homework. Very good. And urwa is all of those things, a handle, something to hold on to. I would prefer the meaning of an anchor in a ship because the ayat in which it occurs is actually comparing darkness and light, and it's actually comparing somebody drowning, and that continuous imagery, that compound imagery in the Quran, I think it's furthered by the idea of someone drowning or someone holding on for dear life. فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. I wouldn't imagine somebody holding a doorknob for dear life, right, or a mug handle for dear life, but I would imagine somebody holding an anchor to a ship for dear life. So that's, by context, I would think that the context clue there makes you want to think that the isti'ara, the illusory reference made in the ayah is that to the anchor of a ship. Also, what furthers that notion is that in other places in the Quran, Allah describes people that are in darkness or in misguidance, that are drowning in the depths of waves, right? And as they drown deeper and deeper, it gets darker and darker. إِذَا أَخْرَجَ يَدَهُ لَمْ يَكَدْ يَرَاهَا. He takes his hand out, he can't even almost see his hand, right? So the idea is that darkness and light are almost like drowning and coming up for air and getting light again, right? So that's the contrast that's kind of compounded from other places in the Quran. Baqarah and Nur have an interesting relationship. All right. Have you ever talked about the identity of Dhul Qarnayn? No, I will soon though. Or will I? Based on the context of the passage about him and reading it in light of Hebrew scriptures, there are pretty compelling reasons to believe that he really is Cyrus the Great. In the book of Daniel, the prophet Daniel has a vision of a ram pushing westward and northward and southward so that no beasts might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. That's Daniel 8:4. Later in the same book, Gabriel tells Daniel that the two-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia, hence the origin of the name Dhul Qarnayn. In other passages in the Old Testament, Cyrus is actually mentioned directly by name and is considered righteous ruler that God used to facilitate for the Jews returning to their homeland and rebuilding the temple at Jerusalem. This may be why the Jews would take a special interest in him and ask Dhul Qarnayn about him. It's possible. I haven't done enough homework, but I will send these notes of yours. Actually, I'll do it now so I don't get lazy. I will send these notes of yours to my colleague Sharif Randawa, who is currently studying biblical Hebrew, along with being a student of Quranic studies with me, and has done quite an extensive amount of research on Quran and biblical issues. So I'm going to send this to him and see his response. What are your thoughts? Okay, that's done. So no answer for you yet, but inshallah. And it should be an interesting, even if this course is over and I get his answer, I may just post it on Facebook or something, inshallah. All right, could you please explain 1587? We have certainly given you 7 of the often repeated and the great Quran. Why does the ayah say 7 when Surah Fatiha has 6 verses? Who said Fatiha has 6 verses? There are 7. There are 2 opinions on the Fatiha. Either Bismillah is part of the Fatiha or it's not. Those who say Bismillah is part of the Fatiha, when they get to غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, they look at that as one ayah, making it 7. Others say صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ ayah, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ ayah. And so you still end up with 7 either way. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَاكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِ وَالْقُرْآنِ الْعَظِيمِ. We've given you 7 the highly praised ones. 7 of the highly praised ones, meaning the ayat of Fatiha and the great Quran. Okay, Ustad, you've discussed an ayah in Surah An-Nur about the word Nur. Yes. Now, speaking of this word, please help me understand these ayat. Allahu waliyyu alladhina amanu yukhrijuhum min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur. How can those who believe to live in the darkness? Aren't they believers and shouldn't they be in the light? No, we're all surrounded by darkness. We're surrounded by darkness and Allah is pulling us out into the light. In other words, misguidance is all around us, and Allah is continuously helping us get away from it. So if we're always in the light, that means there's no challenges in our life. There's no darknesses in our life. So the idea is that Allah, those who have faith inside them, those who have a little bit of light inside them, Allah pulls them out and brings them into the full light. That's the idea. In Surah Abasa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expressed disapproval to Rasulullah indirectly by addressing him as a third person. That shows Allah's deep consideration towards his messenger. While in Surah Al-Qiyamah, Allah tells the Prophet ﷺ to not move his tongue quickly to hasten the recitation. At first, it feels as if Allah is reprimanding Rasulullah, which may sound a bit like stern telling. What are your thoughts on it, Ustad? I think it's more consolation than sternness in Surah Al-Qiyamah. It's telling the Prophet ﷺ not to worry so much. لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به is not, I don't see it as reprimand. I actually see it as consolation. Don't develop so much anxiety over this issue, is what the Prophet ﷺ is being told. Surah An-Nur is structurally strong, balancing the social and political issues in our daily lives. Do you think Muslim educators need to explain and teach mankind what are written in the Quran? There are so many misunderstandings in this area. I would agree with you. I think the teachings of Surah An-Nur are probably the least understood and the most needed in the Ummah. That's my take on it. I plan on doing my khutbahs from now until probably Ramadan on just the ayat that were revealed after the slander of Aisha radiallahu anha. Just those ayat, nothing else. And I'm hoping it sheds some light on how serious that one subject is, but that's not the only subject. All of the subject matter in Surah An-Nur is really unique and really priceless. It's really, really priceless, all of it. And it's something that we should take time to study in depth. I did an in-depth series on Nur. We haven't released it on Bayyinah TV yet, but I completed it. It took me, I think it was almost a year to study Surah An-Nur. And then I taught it over the course of, I think it took a few months to teach it. But the compilation is ready, and inshallah it'll be released soon. Okay. Surah Al-Sharh. أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ الَّذِي أَنْقَضَ ظَهْرَكَ. What is the weight mentioned here? There's lots of opinions on the weight. I like the interpretation that the Prophet ﷺ, before revelation came, was weighed down by the problem of humanity. He was helping people with halful fudul, and he was doing humanitarian work, and yet the tragedy of humanity was only getting worse and worse and worse. Like he didn't see, I can fight hunger, I can help the hungry, but how do I destroy hunger? Like I can help the oppressed, but what do I do to get rid of oppression? Like I don't see a solution. Why is humanity constantly heading down this dark path? And it was burdening him. It used to really weigh on him. And Allah removed that sadness and that burden because he's spending days and days away from family, staying up in a cave. That's not normal. That's actually something that's really weighing heavy on him. And Allah removed that burden from him by giving him the revelation. Well, and so الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك. Some say that it's actually the fact that revelation stopped coming for some time, that it was burdening him, and finally Allah sent the revelation. Some have looked at it that way too. Ustad, is it possible that if in a surah we take A as a section in it, and then within A we have a B, C, and the ayat are in A are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the ayat in C are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 5, 4, 3, but okay. The ayat. Okay, so you're saying basically, is it possible to have very complex passages and then sub passages within those passages? Theoretically, yeah, I agree that it's possible. That's possible. I don't reduce it to simplistic structures. The second question is interesting. Why did Allah choose ring composition um, as an order in the Quran and Torah as well? Is it more effective to human minds or attractive? I don't know why Allah chose it. I just know that, and I don't think ring composition is the only kind of composition chosen. But several kinds of structures, as I was mentioning in my discussions on structure, have been chosen. But it certainly is really beautiful. It's really beautiful, and it forces you to reflect. It forces you not to forget what you studied before, and just move on. لم يخروا عليها صما وعميانا. It's actually, this kind of study makes you want to keep going back to the Book of Allah and back to the Book of Allah and back to the Book of Allah. And in a sense, it's a kind of tadabbur in and of itself. It's enforcing tadabbur. So you go back to the ayat and go back to them again. وَأَن لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية. Um, and what is the connection between these verses, and who are the people who make unnecessary efforts? I don't know what you're referring to as unnecessary efforts. Surah Al-Najm, the ayat you cited, where a human being will only get what they made efforts towards, and that his efforts will soon be seen, are referring to people's efforts towards goodness in this life and what they're going to see, or bad deeds, and they're going to see that how they turned out in the next life. Surah Al-Ghashiyah is describing the exhaustion of Judgment Day. So I don't know why you want to see a connection between those two things. Maybe you're thinking about the effort and the exhaustion that's been mentioned. Maybe that's why, but I don't know what else you might be trying to get my attention towards. There's lots of questions left, not much time, so I'll just take 3 more. You gave comprehensive notes on Surah Al-Fath. I felt so much closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you were explaining it. Do you think we should approach all surahs in this way? There are levels of studying the Quran. I think that you should go through the entire Quran with brief explanation once, and actually I think you should do so once every year. And while you're doing that, and you get in the habit of engaging Quran, 1 or 2 surahs in depth every year. But that's just my recommendation. I have 2 ideas concerning the structure that I want to share with you that I found amazing. The first is Surah Al-Inshirah. The surah contains 8 ayat. If we cut the ayat in 2 halves, by the way, I've done an analysis of Inshirah and its structure. It's on Bayyinah TV. Okay. 4 ayat of the first half have AB because the chest, I'd have to look at it. I have to really map your structures out. So whoever wrote this, I think we have it on file. I'm going to read through this and send you a response, inshallah, and see what you're getting at. And okay, that's it. That's all your questions. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How do you turn this off?